I get no respect around here. You know, kiddos, I don't just tell the stories. I was in one once. You ever heard of the Baldur's Gate 3 serial killer? I was the guy that got him. Monday, August 21st. It was a day like any other, except it wasn't because it was. On this abnormally average day, I was taking a noon snooze on my comically oversized beanbag. Helps me write. Unfortunately, my train of thought was derailed by the skip-pop-pop of a Slack notification going off on my PC. Editor-in-chief was paging me. He had an angle for a story we could use for the Stuff of Legends. That's the thing you're listening to right now. How meta. The thing about the Stuff of Legends, if you haven't noticed, is I like themes. I like framing devices. I like taking two things you might be familiar with, like World of Warcraft and Westerns, combining them and seeing what pops up. I wipe with originality. That explains why I'm talking to you right now like a gumshoe detective from the 1950s and adding a fourth wall break to the mix. I wanted something special for Halloween. Something eerie, something spooky. I was afraid we'd pulled the trigger too soon on the Civilization 2 video. That was a truly haunting one, and I imagined hard to top, but the editor-in-chief was making it up to me. The headline read, Baldur's Gate 3 Dark Urge player kills nearly every Act 1 NPC, stores them in one house. Terrifying. I had to click on another IGN article. More horrifying was the screenshot inside. It was one house, all right. And it was a pile of bodies unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Hundreds of corpses with limbs intertwined, heaped into themselves, at danger of spilling out of the windows. You'll have a hard time explaining that to the landlord. But he was probably in the pile too, mixed in with all the cadavers. Looked like a child's toy chest of a mess of bodies with an attempt to stay orderly and organized. But in the end, the sheer volume made it difficult to discern where the criteria for one massive decease ended and where one began. Aside from the glowing white pile blocking off one of the exits, it shined bright and proud like a fleshy star atop the most macabre Christmas tree you ever did see. God knows what was in there. God and soon enough me. I reached out for an interview. Fresh off my first year as a games journalist, I hadn't conducted a formal interview yet. I rethunk and rewrote my opener at least a dozen times. There's an art to approaching a reader with an air of casual formality. The first few sentences really need to grab the attention with your energy and willingness to connect, but you don't want to assault them with your joie de vivre in written form. Ration the exclamation points. Loosen up a little.
Hello. Your Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough has gotten a lot of attention, ha 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 hee hee hoo hoo.
Nailed it. Was starting to think I might have blown my load too early with the exclamation point immediately after the first word. I've gotten emails from Saudi Arabian princes with more sincerity than what I sent, but I think the ha-ha at the end must have resonated with him because he messaged me back, delighted to participate. Everything was set up for an afternoon rendezvous over Discord. Not too early so I could get all of my questions in order, and not too late in the day out of respect for bedtime schedules. It was just the right amount of time for the paranoia to start gnawing away at my brain. Every thought imaginable was buzzing away in my cranium. I wasn't worried I was gonna flub the interview. I knew I was gonna flub it. It was my first one and no one gets it right on the first try. I was worried I'd bitten off more than I could chew. I have this tinfoil hat and tie theory that some video games are a sort of personality test. You know, the type and the like where you pick your favorite color, favorite animal, and find out what kind of bagel you are. Maybe it's because I'm an everything bagel, but I was looking at those screenshots of his doings, trying to get an insight into the feller I'd be having a chat with in a couple of hours. I'd found his most recent trophy, another screenshot titled Act 1 and 2 complete, kills thus far. The carnage in the house from before was doubled and bursting out of the seams. The entire front lawn was hidden away under heaps of lifeless creatures with no regards to feng shui. According to the articles and the comments, he had hunted down every character he could find and gathered them all in a single location. I know it's just a video game, but did I want to make my existence known to someone like that in case he ever got tired of pixels and decided to move on to something else? I started the call. We exchanged niceties and then I put on my work voice. We'll start from the beginning then. So, Baldur's Gate 3 came out at the start of August. You posted your screenshots around August 20th. Was that your first playthrough?
Besides going through the beginning of Alpha, yeah.
Oh,
this is my first official release playthrough.
Right, yes. How long have you been playing Early Access?
Ever since it was released.
Oh, you're a big fan then, huh?
Oh yeah, it's been pretty fun. Every time, of course, I went for months without playing whenever there was nothing going on, but every time a new update came on, I played through it again.
I was establishing a timeline. Baldur's Gate 3 officially released on August 3, 2023, but it was in early access since 2020. I wanted to know if he went for the sicko run right from the rip, or maybe if he'd already gotten his fill of being a law-abiding citizen. It's like the inverse of the Grand Theft Auto effect. where players eventually get oversaturated in lawlessness and chaos, so they start obeying traffic signs and driving like sane people as a palate cleanser. It seemed as if I was sniffing around in the right areas, or maybe my overactive imagination was clinging to any sense of normalcy. He puts on his pants one leg at a time, just like me. But did he put his socks on before or after the pants? That's what separates us from the beast. Lovely, lovely, lovely. What was your first run as? Like your first character?
I believe I was a wizard, and just a regular human wizard.
Regular human wizard. That's a bit of a departure from your current playthrough, I imagine.
Yeah, just a little bit.
He was candid and jovial, but so was Hannibal Lecter. I didn't liken him to the most iconic cannibal, though. The Dark Urge is an option in Baldur's Gate 3. Essentially, your character has a sinister voice in their head suggesting heinous acts out of nowhere, like telling you to kick a cute little squirrel or dodge your taxes. It's an intrusive character within your character. Less like Hannibal Lecter and more like Dexter with his Dark Passenger. I wanted to know what his relationship with this part of himself was, so I asked him to explain the Dark Urge to me.
The Dark Urge of what I saw and what I understood was pretty much that nagging feeling in the back of your head, always saying, kill this guy, do this, become evil. And I thought it'd be kind of a nice addition to the story itself. It offers some nice, cool story plot points to it. And so I decided to do that because normally I go full good every time. And so this time I thought I'd go full good, but have that nagging feeling all the time as well.
Just as I suspected. He was a Dudley Do-Right in need of a palate cleanser. Full good with evil voices in his head. But something wasn't sitting right. There were way too many bodies. You can fight off the Dark Urge, but this must have been the disembodied voice of a door-to-door salesman. If you keep losing the same argument with yourself about whether or not you should kill an NPC and drag their body home with you over 500 times, maybe you should reconsider your debate skills. I press further. But you have all these bodies, so how do these characters get killed then if you're doing a good run?
To be honest, these are the people that you fight regularly.
Oh, these are just
like those. Yeah, those goblins there are from the Fleet Goblin camp that I wiped out. Then everything else is just around the map. That's why I said in the comment section that I wanted to visually see how many people you actually kill in this game. And so that's what I really did this for. The sorting them out and everything I thought was just a fun little side project.
I was shocked. Pure awe. I couldn't wrap my head around what he was saying. According to him, these screenshots are not pictures of all the NPCs as was reported by the major outlets. It was all the NPCs any player would most likely slay regardless of Dark Urges or not. Even if you weren't playing as the Urge, you would still come across all these characters.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
That's amazing.
There's probably around 10 of them in the screenshot you shared there that I may not have killed. I couldn't remember, but they were around the people I did, so I picked up all the bodies. For instance, the fungal plantoid dudes there. I know I didn't kill any of them, but I must have picked them up because they were there in the vicinity.
As to the screenshot, why don't you tell me then, what is the method of organization here? What you got going on? I said we'll start at the north, the glaring white. What are those?
Those are all goblins right there. Pretty much I had divided it all up by race to begin with. And so I just threw the goblins up to the top. And then to the side, I put all the mind linker guys. Then to the left of it is where the undead start there in the left corner. And then down below up to the middle is all humanoid. The start of Act 2, I dumped all the bodies at that first camp you get into right when you enter the city. And at that point, after I had all close to 600 bodies down and organized, walking through that camp there was huge headache.
How many of these bodies would you say your Dark Urge was responsible for?
Honestly, not very many. Maybe 2 or 3. I know the first one, the Bard lady, was the first one, but that's kind of part of the story, that you just murder and slice her and then you meet up with your butler dude.
2 or 3 bodies out of the entire collection were killed due in part to the Dark Urge. This was not a spree killer as I was led to believe. A strange choice of subject matter for virtual taxonomy perhaps, but not a rampaging lunatic by any standards. If anything, this fella had created a type of art, an organized, living, so to speak, unbreathing scatterplot of all the characters the average Baldur's Gate 3 player would kill during a run. If you've made it past Act 1 and Act 2, you probably have a sizable body count comparable to the pile pouring out of the camp in Act 2. The real story is no one had bothered to ask this man what had happened. Outlets took his comment without context and other outlets pointed at those outlets. They judged him. I judged him. And to those people with all those assumptions, and to the networks that didn't reach out to you, what would you say?
That's a hard question to answer. I guess it's really easy to judge things just by looking at it without understanding. I can fully understand how they came up with the assumption that I went Dark Urge, because that is a whole hell of a lot of bodies that you drop in a game. But like I said, it was entertaining and more fun just to watch all the theories pop up, so I didn't want to ruin any of that.
Oh, so that's your real fun right there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I asked him a few more questions, but that was the meat of the conversation. When the call ended, I sat in silence. I checked to make sure I recorded everything and listened to the audio on loop. I let the thoughts sort themselves out. This man was innocent in more ways than one. He was innocent of the accusations people were flinging his way. He wasn't a spree killer stuffing barns with everybody he could get his hands on. He was also innocent in his seemingly never-ending empathy, the kind of innocence you'd normally associate with a child because the world hadn't ripped it out of them yet. His run of Baldur's Gate 3 was no more or less bloody than anyone else's, but it isn't until we're confronted with a visual representation that we feel disgust. Not at ourselves, but at the person who revealed the truth. He unintentionally showed us the amount of wanton carnage the average player partakes in. Would we be so willing if the count was held over our heads, even if it is only pixels? I learned a lot about myself and the nature of journalism on that day. It's easy to pass up thoroughness for sensationalism in this industry. In our hurry to try and get a firm grip on the ever-slippery and ever-changing zeitgeist, we may forget to remember the human behind the monitor. Maybe that's by design. Perhaps my initial paranoia wasn't that my interview subject was abnormal, but perhaps I was afraid that he wasn't, and it wouldn't make for a good story. I'd sooner think he was the new Ted Bundy rather than an ordinary Joe with a fondness for organization, whether it be arranging rows of rhubarb in Stardew Valley or dead bodies in Baldur's Gate 3. What I got instead was a premature reminder to keep myself grounded and avoid letting my head be swept away by my own ambitions. It's a valuable lesson that I intend to keep with me for as long as I remain in this field and thereafter. The lesson from my friend, the Baldur's Gate 3 serial killer.